Good morning and welcome. Welcome to Friday with the Coffer Center. I know it's Friday because it's SoundCheck, which makes it one of my favorite times of the week. We get to sit down and enjoy some conversation and community, which is still and will continue to be one of the things that I treasure most about the space that we share at the Coffer Center. Before we get started, a little housekeeping. We want to make sure that you stay tuned to our conversations and events. So if you are not already plugged in, we invite you to follow us. Feel free to follow social media at Coffer Center. That's Facebook and Instagram. Or you can also subscribe to our newsletter if you're staying off your social streams and want the information to come to you. This will come right to your inbox. Just go to coffercenterchicago.com, go right down to the bottom middle to the Coffer headliner and add your information, and we'll make sure that we get all of our events delivered directly to your inbox so that you could join us for future events and conversations and series such as this. I am going to invite my friend Dr. Greta Pope to the conversation. Dr. Greta Pope has been so generous in offering these conversations through the Coffer Center. And this is exactly, like I said, what I miss about our physical space and what I'm grateful that we've been able to do together in the virtual space. Good morning, Greta. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Jess. How are you?
I am, just like last week, I have my blanket on my lap because it's still, gosh, how many inches of snow are there out here?
Unbelievable. Have you been enjoying it, playing in it and so forth?
That is my plan for this weekend. I have a brand new pair of snow pants that I'm going to break in. So I fully plan on finding the biggest drift and then doing a headlong jump into it, just because this feels like the snow of what was it, like 2011, where the snow is so deep that you really can't hurt yourself. So I feel like I have to take advantage of it while it's as high as it is. So that's my plan.
How about your kids? Are they enjoying it? Have they been getting out in it?
Oh yes, absolutely. And again, with the snow drifts, I feel like you could go around the corner and anything could be a snow hill now because we're just, we're neck high in hills. So I think there's going to be sledding in our future for sure. Yeah. And they've absolutely been enjoying it the way that a child could. So my hope is to enjoy it the same way that a child enjoys it. Instead of thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. So
that's right. Well, that's great. I love that color on you. That mustard color, so very pretty on you.
Thank you. This is the pop of color where it's gray and cold outside. I'm bringing a little bit of sunshine inside today. So this is there we go. See my floral print shirt and my mustard yellow, and this is the warmth that I exude through the camera today. So
I love it.
Well, I'm gonna leave the talk over to you. Speaking of warmth and exuding through the camera, I'm looking forward to hearing you and Richard getting to talk. So without further ado, I will leave it to you.
Okay, sounds very good. Hey there, and welcome to SoundCheck. I'm Dr. Greta Pope, and I'm so excited to have this opportunity to visit with creatives from a variety of disciplines about their professional journey. We are in the midst of a pandemic that has changed all of our lives and the ways in which we work. We will use this forum to share our thoughts, feelings, and best practices for surviving this challenging time. I'm excited today to have a Chicago broadcast legend with us. Richard Steele has been a presence in the Chicago broadcast market since 1970. He spent many years as a radio personality on some of Chicago's top urban music stations. Steele made the transition to talk radio at mid-career and spent the next 28 years at WBEZ, Chicago's NPR affiliate. During that time, he became known for his probing interviews of newsmakers and pop culture icons. Richard has also been a pledge host on WTTW PBS for more than 25 years. Currently, he hosts a weekend jazz show on WHPK, which is affiliated with the University of Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Richard Steele.
What an intro. What an intro. What an intro. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Greta.
It's so good to see you. You look great.
Yeah, I'm hanging on for an old guy. You know what I mean? It's I really can't complain. It's okay. I had a great run in radio, and so I'm thankful.
It's great. I'm loving your room there. All the music things and the little beefeater and all the recordings, and it's just so nice.
And a poster of Miles Davis back here too.
Oh, and a poster of Miles Davis. Yeah. Wow, beautiful. It's beautiful. So this is your workspace?
Yeah, I have several workspaces. This is one of them. This is a sort of a TV room, but I have all my CDs in these on these shelves in back of me. Yeah. And you know, this is a pretty big apartment. This is a co-op. It's a pretty big apartment. We bought this. It was a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom apartment. So there's a lot of room.
A lot of space. Yeah.
Don't tell my grandkids that.
Be moving in. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Where are you originally from? Are you from Chicago?
Actually, no. I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. And how did you end up in Chicago? How did you come here?
Well, it's kind of a long story, which I'll shorten. I was born in Brooklyn. My mother was a single parent at the time, and she worked in Washington, D.C., and then she came to work in Chicago, and she loved this city. And so she got married. My younger brother came along, and then my mother determined that I should be with them in Chicago. So I had to leave Brooklyn, which I didn't like at all. And when I got here, Chicago was so cold. I went, oh, this is too cold. Because, you know, in New York, it gets cold, but doesn't stay cold long. It doesn't get nearly as cold as it does in Chicago. So I was like, damn, this is cold. You know what I mean? So, you know, and then I had another situation too. And some of this, I think, helped me in radio later along the line. But when I came to Chicago as a kid, I think I was 8 or 9 years old. My family in New York are all West Indian. My grandmother from Barbados, and a lot of West Indians in Brooklyn. So when I came to Chicago, I had a West Indian accent combined with a New York accent, right? And so that was really strange because, you know, look, most of the kids here, their roots were in Mississippi. Yeah. And so when I got to grammar school here, I remember a teacher taking me around to other teachers and saying, listen to him talk.
That's funny.
Yeah, you know, so that was the beginning of that. And then on to high school, and I sang with a doo-wop group. I did that. That was cool.
You know, I was going to ask you about that because, you know, I knew that you sang with a doo-wop group at Hirsch High School because my husband went to high school with you, and he told me all about it. He said, oh, you were great. You were singing lead with the doo-wop group. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I knew your husband well. You know, we graduated the same year.
Yeah, you know? That's fantastic. So what was it like singing with a doo-wop group, and how long did you do it, and how many people were in it?
Well, there were 5 of us, and I guess we did that for our junior and senior years. The thing with that, we started singing in the lunchroom, just, you know, for fun. Yeah. And when we looked around, we had a big crowd. I mean, you know, and a lot of girls, and so. I thought that was pretty cool because normally, you know, with a lot of girls around, it's usually football players and basketball players, but they're kind of in season. We were always in season, you know what I mean? So it's a great way to get girls. And so we continued to do that. And an interesting thing about Hirsch at that point was, I think, still maybe, I don't know, 55% white, 45% black. Mm-hmm. And so we had a principal who was very strict. And as a matter of fact, he had one guy that I know, he made him cut his mustache off because he was growing his mustache early, and the principal ordered him to have it shaved.
Wow.
That's how strict the guy was. Mm-hmm. So when we came along, all the talent shows had, you know, ethnic touches. You know, if you were Italian, you played accordion, you know, yeah. and, you know, that kind of thing on the talent shows. So when we came along, we were entirely different from anything that had happened before us. Yeah. And so we became real popular. We were like, you know, we were like the thing. and the reason I sang lead is because the group that we did a lot of tunes by was the Spaniels, and my voice was in the lead singer's range. I wasn't like a great singer, but my voice was very specifically in that range, and so I led a lot of the songs, and that was a thrill. We did a song called "Peace of Mind," which was a big song by the Spaniels, and the girls would go woo, and I went, whoa, this is going on, you know. I loved it.
That is great. So
and by the way, let me just say this: I'm probably, you know, like very few people who put in the yearbook next to their names what they want to do or be when they grow up. People say they want to be a teacher, they want to build, you know, all of that. Unbelievably, I said, I want to be a radio announcer or disc jockey. Very few people ever do the things that they say in that book. You know that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Nobody ends up doing what they say. You just say that because you need to put something behind your name.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So how did you segue from singing in high school to becoming a broadcaster? How did you make that dream a reality?
Well, when I was in the military after high school, I didn't go to college. And while I was in the military, I bought the tape recorder, and I used Ebony magazine, and I read the commercials in the magazine as if I was doing like radio, and I'd let the guys listen to it in the barracks, and they'd laugh at me and say, "You really think you can be on the radio? Please give me a break." So after I got out of the military, I didn't come back to Chicago. I went back to Brooklyn, the place I was born, and I went to school for radio. And I went to several radio schools and, you know, sent out tapes and tried to get a job, and I got rejected a lot. And then I finally got a yes. Well, first I got a yes from a station in Atlanta who said, "We love new talent. We think we like your tape, and we think we're going to hire you." This was like maybe in November. So they said, "We're going to start the station on the 1st of January is going to be our kickoff with this brand new station, a soul station." So the 1st of January came, they hadn't called me. You know how that is, right? It's a little rejection in the arts. So I kept calling them, and kept getting the runaround. And finally, I got to the guy who was doing the hiring, and he said, "Listen, we've decided, you've heard this before, we've decided to take a different direction." So, you know, like, so I didn't get the job. I was crushed. I thought that was it, but I still kept trying and sending tapes. And a friend of mine who I went to radio school with had gotten a job in Boston on an R&B station. And he and I were in communication. Then he became program director, and he hired me. So I went to my first, before I came to Boston, my first job was in Roanoke, Virginia. A very small station, a very small town.
Great.
I mean, look, Roanoke, I mean, when they talk about towns where the lights go off at 5 o'clock, it was damn near like that. It was a very small, but I learned the basics of radio while I was there. And I actually became program director before I left. I stayed there about a year and a half. I was the only one who knew how to type. So I type up the music list, and that made me, and later on it made me the program director, right? So I stayed there about a year and a half. And then I got a call from the guy I just mentioned in Boston, who I went to radio school with. And he said, "We have an opening. We have a morning show opening. Would you want to come to Boston?" I said, "You kidding me?" So I went to Boston, did the morning show, stayed there about a year. And then the people that I used to work for in Roanoke, Virginia, the guy who was general manager called me and said, "Listen, the agency that reps us also reps the station in Chicago, and I know that's where you're from. I can tell you who to send an audition tape to if you think you might want to go back to Chicago." I said, "Whoa, really?" So I sent the tape, and the station here in Chicago, which at the time was WGRT, they said, "We like your tape. We want you to come in for an interview, and then we'll pay your expenses." So I came to Chicago on my own dime, and I got here, and there were like 4 people in an office on a Sunday, and it was the manager, station manager, general manager, owner, and some other guy. It was 4 people, and program director. So they asked me questions about my affiliations and what I had any interest in politics, because at that point, Fred Hampton had just been killed. It was 1970. I think in the latter part of 69, he had been murdered by the police. And so there was a lot of political stuff going on. I recognized that. So when they asked me questions about politics, I have no interest in politics at all, that kind of thing. And so I think that pleased them. But here's the deal. The guy who owned the station said, I've gotten tapes from guys before, and I had a guy one time who sent me a tape as a sports announcer, and then we hired him on the tape, and when we put him on the air, he was terrible. He said, I was driving along in my car, and I pulled over, called the program director, and said, take him off the air right now. So wow. I was wondering where this was going. So he said, we want to hear you do something live now. So they put me in the studio with an engineer doing the controls, and had me do some sample intros of records and read some live commercials. And had I failed that, I would not have gotten the job. And also, by the way, they were going to pay my expenses coming to Chicago if they hired me. Yeah. If they had not hired me, I was on my own dime. You know what I mean? So, so that's how I came back to Chicago, and I got hired, came back in WGRT 1970, and I've been here ever since. It was an amazing opportunity. That when I think back on it, Greta, I think about I was so disappointed in not getting the job in Atlanta, but had I gotten that job, I don't know where that would have led me. I know this led me to Chicago, a town I knew. And an amazing career over the years. I didn't make Doug Banks money or Tom Joyner money, but it's been pretty steady. My wife always reminds me that I was in the business a lot longer than a lot of people. And actually my income was more than, somebody working an 8-hour job. I mean, it wasn't bad, don't get me wrong. And I have no complaints about that. So that's kind of how I got back here.
That's great. It's funny in life how life leads you to where you're supposed to be. You're so disappointed when this doesn't work out, that particular thing, but then something better is around the corner. And we just always have to remember that. Yeah. So you've been in this business a long time. What would you say are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in broadcasting during your career?
Social media.
That's pretty recent, but there must have been things before that even that were changing.
Well, what had changed, and I came in during a sort of a transition era. When I came in and I was working in Virginia at this small radio station, and then even later in Boston, there was still kind of a setup where there was a music list to play music from, but you had some choices in some categories about what to play. It wasn't like a strict playlist where you had to follow the playlist, and like whatever was there next, that's what you played. And we didn't have a lot of limitation in terms of how long to talk. Not forever, but there was a lot of latitude about how if you wanted to be funny, if you wanted to say stuff, if you wanted to talk about an artist on a record, that was something you could do, which also enhanced the personality aspect of your delivery on the radio, so you needed to know a little bit about music, well, more than a little bit about the music and the artists, and you need to be able to make a connection with the audience. The thing in radio, they tell you in the beginning, and I think it's still true, the audience have to feel like people in the audience have to feel like you're talking to an audience of one, that person. And so that's how it was back then. And the transition started when Black radio started to go heavily into format radio. Before that, it was pretty loose, but it worked. Yeah, the audience loved that. Mm-hmm. Here in Chicago it was WVON, which was the major station. WGRT, the station I was on, was a daytime station. It changed seasonally when the summer arrived, we had longer hours. That's the kind of license we had. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, WVON used to joke about us and call us the station that runs down at sundown. Because in the wintertime, we'd be off like at 4:30, 5 o'clock, Yeah. So, but the changes have been in the personality radio aspect of it. Personality used to be like a major, major part of it. Mm-hmm. And I was around long enough to see that change when it became, by the time I was working for V103, we still had some personality in radio. And more it became, the voice tracking came along, which changed everything. Yeah. Voice tracking allowed people who owned radio stations to have like one person in 3 markets and 4 markets, much like syndication. But in this case, it was, because I did a little voice tracking for a station here, another station where you go in the studio, you do the tracks. I mean, you do voice tracking, introducing the records and all that. And you can sort of pretend you're in another market. Don't be market specific.
Yes.
And a lot of companies have used that over the years, and it eliminated jobs, you know, and the bottom line to that is. And then syndication was a big change. When Tom Joyner syndicated, that was the first African-American radio personality who really blew up in syndication. Yeah. And that changed a lot of things. Tom had a great show, but in the meantime, all the stations that he was on eliminated their morning personality because he was the morning personality. Right. You know, so a lot of changes occurred during the time I was in. I was fortunate in that I survived the changes and that I was able to still maintain. And then when it really got to the next level in terms of social media connected with music radio, I was transitioning to talk radio at that point. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, talk radio also, I mean, really social media, so super big. And I'm technology challenged. But my departure from music radio, I think, was kind of at the right time. I mean, I did jazz on public radio too. And so, but that was the difference. It was more relaxed and I didn't have the format limitations when I was doing jazz on public radio, on WBEZ here. So I survived a lot of changes, and I was very, very lucky in many instances. When I got hired as a pledge host at Channel 11, that's another situation where I was so fortunate. I had a publicist, Terry, I can't think of Terry's last name. She was a publicist and she was doing stuff for me. And so she got me this audition at WTTW to be a pledge host. And I said, oh, this is cool. So I went to the audition. I was terrible. And so the person who did the audition told Terry that, well, he wasn't very good. So she was fantastic. She convinced this person that he's really better than that. Because she asked me, how did you do? I said, I was terrible. I mean, I knew I was terrible, right? So she called this person back and said, listen, I mean, I was her client, but I knew her personally and we were good friends. And she's called this person and said, he's really better than that. That was a bad day. And I'm asking you to please have him come back and do another audition. That's great. I came back, did another audition. I was really pretty good. And so I did pledge drives at WTTW for about 25 years.
Yes, yes. I've certainly seen you on WTTW doing the pledge drives. Fantastic.
Yeah, I got lucky.
Yeah, but lucky, you know, luck is when, what is it? Opportunity meets preparation or whatever that phrase is.
Yeah,
and
you're right. Yeah, that's true. That is true, yeah.
Yeah. So now you were involved in something called Classical Tapestry, which was an innovative program by Symphony Center. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the object of that program was to build on their audience. They wanted a larger Black audience at Symphony Center. And so I don't know whose idea it was, but it was a good idea. It was to mix classical music with jazz. That is to say that on the same program, there'd be, you know, both kinds of music, and many times one tying into the other or having enough connection so that you'd find interest in both. I'll give you a good example. They did a piece one time where the symphony orchestra, are you still there?
Yep, we are.
Okay, yeah, so, somebody was trying to call me. Okay, so the symphony orchestra was doing a piece that had a narration to the piece. Mm-hmm. And so the person who came in to do the narration was James Earl Jones.
Wow.
And so
wow.
I had an opportunity. So here, the setup was I would interview the artist who was the jazz artist. I interviewed Sonny Rollins one time. I'd interview that person before the concert. I mean, the idea we went to a small social room on the first floor, on the second floor rather, and they'd have wine and cheese. And then the guy who was the director of Symphony Center, he and I would sit up on stage, and then in between us would be the artists. And then there'd be a small group of people. The people who had bought season tickets got invited to this thing, and they kind of filled up this room. And that was really nice. We got a chance to talk to the artists, and they made the connection between, Jim and I talked about the classical aspect of it and also the jazz aspect of it. And so it turned out to really be, I think I did it for about 2 years, 2 years. And I met a lot of interesting people, and the audience was exposed to the artist and what they had to say in an intimate setting.
Yes.
My only regret is I don't have a tape recording. I don't have any. Oh. I don't have a visual. I have nothing left of that.
Live interviews. Yeah.
Because they owned it at that point. It was put on by Commonwealth Edison. They owned it, and at the time, it didn't occur to me to really ask them about, could I get a copy of that interview? And so I didn't. Sometimes you're not thinking, and I was not. Right.
That happens. Wow. But that's fantastic though. So did it bring about the result that they were wanting? Were people more, willing to go to?
I think it did. I think it really did. That was the whole point, again, was to increase the size of the audience and also to generate an interest in some classical music that was understandable. And so I think it worked very well. I mean, normally it was a packed house, and it was a plus. And so I did it for about 2 years, and I think they decided on another program and another sponsor because Commonwealth Edison paid for that and also my talent fee.
Yes.
And so it was an interesting and for me, it was, from a career standpoint, it was very good. And I developed a really great relationship with the guy who is the director at Symphony Center. And so he and I became friends, and it gave me access to Symphony Center too, when things came up. And so that was a good thing. It helped me at BEZ because when there were people that we needed to interview that were appearing at Symphony Center, I could always call them and said, listen, can we get so-and-so on to do an interview?
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it gave you some networking opportunity there. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
You have worked on some fantastic projects. Really interesting, and one that really stuck out to me, and I'd like to know more about it, is the barbershop show. That sounds like so much fun. Tell us about that.
Well, it wasn't my concept. They had the barbershop show before I came to it as host. The idea was to do a live broadcast from a barbershop on the west side of Chicago. I think this came up because the station was trying to initiate a better connection with the Black community. And so they had started this maybe a year and a half before I became host. Mm-hmm. And the people that they had were kind of transient. They didn't have a regular host stay as long as they would have liked to have them. And people were just, it was kind of a project. It wasn't like something established as a real program that generated interest. It generated some interest, but it was still kind of an experiment. Actually, it started on Vocalo, which is the sister station of WBEZ, and sort of an experimental thing called Vocalo.org. So that's where it started. All right. Bottom line is, when they were one of the hosts at the point I came in, one of the hosts left the station, and they were short. I think both left the station, as a matter of fact. No, one left the station, and one was still there. And so they said, well, can you be the co-host with this other person? She was incredibly smart. She went on, as a matter of fact, to work for the Washington Post.
Wow.
But so she was a lot of fun. She was not, stuffy at all. So we co-hosted and had a lot of fun, interviewed a lot of people. The idea was to be in the community. So this was a working barbershop. They were cutting hair while we were interviewing people. And then there are times when we'd ask the person who was having their hair cut, what they thought about a given thing that we were, discussing as subject matter. Yeah. And sometimes we got an opinion from the barber, I remember one time a guy brought his kid in, and his kid was in the chair, and he was real fidgety and cried off and on. I guess his first haircut or second haircut. And we just told people on the air, listen, this is a working barbershop. This is a Black father with his son, which is a real positive thing. And this is what we do. We connect with the community. So it was just an amazing experience for me to be right there in the community and talk about issues. We also talked about some Hispanic issues too, because that was part of our audience and part of the neighborhood. So people are always amazed they said to me, was that a real barbershop? Yeah, that was in a barbershop, absolutely. And that's so, cool. And then when I retired officially from BEZ, at that point, I became, when the lady I told you about who went to the Washington Post, when she left, I became the sole host, and they said, well, so we find somebody else, would you do it by yourself? And I said, sure. And that continued. And so I just became the host. Wow. And and then at that point, I had retired from WBEZ. So they said, well, would you like to continue doing the barbershop show as a freelancer? And so I said, sure, right. Are you paying? Are you paying? Yeah, no, they were very generous, and I stayed on, and we had some great experiences. We had some performances. There were times when we had people come in who would do a cappella performances. Wow. Yeah, it was really great. And I'll tell you this, on my very last show, the very last show that I did sort of worked out in that the day that my last show was scheduled was Mavis Staples' birthday. Wow. So I know Mavis. And I told my producer, I said, it's interesting that our last show is on Mavis's birthday. And so she said, well, can we get Mavis to come in? I said, yeah, I don't know about that. She has to get a driver to bring her over to the West Side. And Mavis and I are cool, don't get me wrong, because I'd interviewed her at the radio station. But this was different. Yeah. The barbershop on the West Side. Although, Mavis is a real regular person, so that was not intimidating, not that part of it, but me asking her to do it. Right. So I did ask her to do it, and she agreed. She came in, and when she got there, people's jaws dropped. They said, "Is that Benjamin Staples?" And the other part of it, I also called Gene Chandler, who in a flashback was the Duke of Earl, a big record in R&B, one of the biggest many years ago. He still performs, as a matter of fact. Wow. And so I asked him to come in on this last show, and he did. So both of them were in the barbershop live. That is fantastic. People were like, they just couldn't believe it. When people came into the shop, they went, whoa, is that really? Yeah, it is. That's fantastic. So we had a great time. And then tying it into a local business, I'm sure you're aware of the Brown Sugar Bakery. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, she was my guest that day on that show too. Wow. So she brought this amazing caramel cake to celebrate it was my birthday. Oh. I take that back. It wasn't Mavis's birthday. It was my birthday. Okay. Which is why Mavis said yes. And then the lady from Brown Sugar Bakery bought a big, huge cake. And so we all had this caramel cake, and it was like, nice. it was crazy. You know what I mean? So, but it was just, it was sort of a finale for something that had worked very well. Yeah. Now, were you going to the same barbershop each week? And did you go in with specific topics of discussion, or was it kind of morphed wherever it went? No, we had specific topics, and we had specific guests, as you would have at the radio station. Okay. And guests associated with the topic. They had at one point talked about going to various barbershops. And then it was determined, since we had built a relationship with this barbershop, to make that our regular spot. And just to show you how things can happen, Greta, we did a piece one time on violence in the community and shootings. Mm-hmm. And one of the barbers, we didn't know this, when he weighed in on it, he was very sad. His son had been killed like that, had been shot to death. Oh. And he made his comment. We invited him to the microphone and he talked about it. He was incredibly sad, but it was a jarring reality. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So things like that, you just never know what's going to happen.
No, you don't. You don't. And it's so great that you were there and giving the people a voice. You know, that's huge, giving them a voice and entertainment.
Yeah, that's too. Yeah, you know. Yeah. We had different politicians came in.
Yeah, that's great.
So it was fantastic. Great experience. I still today, when I run into people, they ask me, whatever happened to the barbershop show? And so it makes me feel like we did contribute something. Oh, yeah. And it had some kind of a lasting impact. And so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, people were listening. So what was a typical day like for you before the pandemic began? And has the pandemic affected your work that you're doing now? You know, I know that you're doing kind of, you know, maybe some freelance things or just a variety of kinds of things. So has the pandemic affected a lot what you've been doing?
Well, I was always on the move. I mean, I'm a person who, I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and I can't stay in bed even though I'm retired. And I did a lot of things. I connected with different organizations and, you know, I've done things with family. I've got 2 granddaughters. I think I mentioned that before. They're both 19. And each of them has a brother. One is 13 and the other is 15. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of connecting a lot of things with them was part of it. And even then, spending a little more time at home because, you know, when I was working full time, I was totally involved in media and I was always somewhere doing something. So I still had that habit. I still was connected to things on the outside, the Hyde Park Jazz Society and other organizations like that I was a part of and did things with. Our union, which, you know, did things with, I still do, as a matter of fact. Yes. You and I were on the board together.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
You know, of SAG-AFTRA. So I did a lot of things. I was always gone every day, doing something. Yeah. When COVID hit and it was necessary to stay at home a lot, I was very antsy, like a lot of other people in the beginning. And then over this period, even though I'm technology challenged, I began to do some things that people asked me to do on Zoom. Mm-hmm. The Hyde Park Jazz Festival thing on Zoom. And then there was a thing like a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you are familiar with the Hot House and Marguerite Horburg, right? Mm-hmm. I went to Cuba with her, by the way, and some people about 2 years ago to the Havana Jazz Festival. Wow, cool. So she called and asked if I do a thing. They were doing a virtual concert called Chicago Goes to Havana or vice versa. And so she asked would I do some MC stuff on Zoom. There were 4 nights. I did one of them. Mark Ruffin did one, who used to be here at WNUA. And there were 2 other people who did 2, each did a night. And I did the last night on Sunday night by introducing the acts. You know, they took my audio and then they put it together with the performers. I wasn't sure how that would come out, even though I did the same thing for several other organizations. Mm-hmm. But that's what I've been doing. I mean, I've still been involved and I've still been busy. I'm with an organization called the Chicago Area Project, CAP, and I'm on the board. And so we've done some things. We have meetings and we do other things online. So, I've really been involved a lot in that area of communication.
That's great. That's great. So you have a studio in your home. I mean, you have equipment and so forth that you're getting a really good sound because you have a good sound right now.
Unfortunately, I have none of that. I don't even have a laptop. And so when I'm doing some things and people say, well, do you have a computer? No, I don't have a PC and I don't have a laptop. I had a laptop and I gave it to one of my granddaughters for college because she needed it and that would cut down on the expenses. And I didn't use it as much as I wanted to. So I gave her the laptop.
Mm-hmm.
So I was left with the only thing I have now is an iPhone.
Wow.
And I've tried to learn to do as many things on my iPhone as possible. All the Zoom stuff I do on iPhone.
It looks great and it sounds great. Wow. You know, iPhones are really quite something. You know, they're very sophisticated technology.
And just to show you how that works, before we started the program, it was suggested that I get a wider view as opposed to how a phone sits, you know, the other way. Mm-hmm. And I have a stand. I had a small stand that was on, but I have a larger stand, so I can put the thing on like this way. Yeah. So I had to go get that, but I do have it, and I know sometimes that's required. I did that when I did the festivals and did the audio for festivals, and So,
may I ask what iPhone you have? A really recent one?
This is an iPhone 11.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you look great. It sounds great. That's wonderful. That's good to know.
Amazing,
Yeah, it is amazing. It is amazing.
Technology, unbelievable.
It's really something. It's really, really something. We just have to keep up with it. We have to keep up and know how to use it, because this is the way that the world is going. So,
well, unfortunately, I'm not as up on it as I should be. I'm just, I do minimally what I need to do, and I can do that with this iPhone. And so I don't want to buy another laptop,
Yeah.
And so I just, I do what I do on my iPhone, and my wife has a what do you call it?
iPad or something.
She has an iPad, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I'm old school.
But all you need to do really is what you need to do. You need to get the work done that you want to get done. That's it.
Right.
So a whole lot of extra stuff is not necessary.
Listen, it's kind of like when you asked me to send a photo and a short bio. And so that's not much, but I know how to do that.
Yes, because you need to do that. So that's, you're doing everything you need to do to remain viable and be doing your thing. It's great. It's great. So what advice would you give to people wanting to get into the broadcast business, a young person coming along that has written on his high school yearbook that they want to be in broadcasting? What would you recommend?
Learn as much about social media as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. I know a few years ago, I was looking online, and WGCI was looking to hire somebody, and they listed all the things that you need to be into. I mean, Twitter, Facebook, a blog, possibly all of that stuff. The smaller part of that was your ability to communicate with people with your talent and your delivery and all of that. So it's changed a lot in that. I would suggest to people that you need to be totally connected to all the social media options. As you well know, in television, the term used for journalists is MMJ, and that is multimedia journalists, which means that they're hiring people. They want them to be able to write, to present on camera, and in smaller markets, they have to also be camera operators.
Yeah.
That hasn't come to larger cities like this one yet, but the technology is making it possible so that people can do that. Wow. Yeah. So I would suggest to someone who's interested in doing this to have a firm grasp on history and know where this media has come from and what it was and how it got to this point, and then become as adept as you can at social media. I mean, that's really so important, and give a good idea how things have changed. The people that are on regular airships doing music shows, basically all they do is introduce the music and the contests, and that's it. There's very little personality involved in that, unless you happen to be a morning host, who has an option to connect with the community and to to say stuff. A good example of how things have changed in that respect and gone totally open and acceptable is the Breakfast Club, the syndicated program out of New York, with Charlamagne tha God. And he wasn't like he worked at some other radio stations, But he wasn't an announcer who worked at a radio station. He was a guy from the hood, you know what I mean, who had good communication skills, connected with people, and was able to say what he wanted to say in a show like this, and they hired him. And, you know, that's a whole different direction. But most radio stations, unless you're the morning host, you're not going to get a chance to say and do all of that. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So people need to keep that in mind when they think about, ooh, I think I want to be a DJ. Well, first of all, they don't even use that term anymore.
Yeah.
A DJ is a guy who spins in clubs, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Radio, and that's a whole different thing from radio. It really is.
Yeah. You know, I guess, you know, on one hand, it seems like they don't have an opportunity to really connect with their audience. But then on the other hand, they're probably expecting social media to be that way that they connect with their audience. So they have a bunch of followers on Instagram and Twitter and all these things, and that is how they connect.
That is correct. That's what they do. I mean, that is absolutely correct, you know. So it's changed, and I don't think it's difficult for the people who grew up in this era, because that's what you do. Right. Yeah. Right. You know, I have a 13-year-old grandson and a 15-year-old. I don't think they've ever seen a phone with a receiver.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
I saw something in a kind of a comic situation where kids were shown a rotary phone.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I had no idea what to do. You know, how to work that. Yeah.
What do you do? How do you do that? Yeah. How does that work? You know? Yeah. I mean, that's how much time. That's how much it has changed over the years. And I think that these people who want to be in communications, they know that because they grew up with that. You know what I mean? I have to make myself learn about Twitter and Instagram and everything else, and Facebook. This is what they do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kids, small children,
little bitty kids. You're right. You're right. It's amazing. It's amazing. But
listen, there was a commercial. There was a commercial on, which was me. Not in the commercial, but represented me, where the grandparents were waiting for their kids, their grandchildren, to come over to the house so they could fix whatever was wrong with the cell phone. You know, and so because you can always ask them, and they know. And they know. I mean, it's kind of the situation. My 13-year-old grandson, he knows, you know. I hate to have to ask him, Jackson, how do I do this? You know what I mean?
I'm sure he's happy to help you, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's a different world today. And we just have to keep up with it to the best of our ability. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's great to have grandchildren and young people around you to help you when you have a question, know what to do. My screen on my phone one day was totally like black and blue, and I mean, just really totally not what it was supposed to have been. And I was teaching a piano class at Shy Arts, and I asked one of the kids, I said, you know, I can't get my phone to do, and he goes, oh, boop, 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 and it was fixed.
Yeah,
and I touched 3 things, and I was like, thank you, and asked him how he did it so that if it should happen again, I'd know what to do. So yeah, it's good to be in the company of young people.
Did you know that when you buy an iPhone today, as I bought this iPhone 11 about 3 or 4 months ago, do you know that there's no how-to book that goes with it?
I know. You just got to get on Google or something, or ask your friends.
Right. Yeah. Because I kept saying, well, where's the book? And they said,
the manual?
there is no book. You know what I mean? That's hard for me to, to process. You know what I mean? But
I know. But you can go on YouTube. I mean, you can find information.
No. I mean, I get that.
But but I understand what you're saying. It's like, well, doesn't it come with a manual of some sort?
None.
That is so funny. That is so funny. Well, Richard, it has been delightful to be with you. I'm going to call Jess back. She may have a couple of questions for you, but I thank you so much for being with us today. This was just wonderful. So interesting to hear from you. You've had a wonderful, illustrious career.
Well, I appreciate talking to you and sharing these experiences with you. And I want people to know, I think I mentioned it in the beginning, that I ran to you. My granddaughter was at Shy Arts, where you teach. Yes. And one day I was waiting for my granddaughter to get out of school, and I saw you and I went, whoa.
Yeah, I was coming out of the school. Yeah, I'm a teaching artist there. And I just teach in the afternoon segment, in the arts section, you know, because I'm not a teacher. That's not been my background. But I teach the arts. So I teach, well, right now I'm teaching only one course there. It's a contemporary jazz vocal course, but I have taught piano. I've taught music business, music theory. I've taught like everything that would be available for musicians there. And it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful school. So I'm sure that your granddaughter is going to do very well coming out of there. Kids have gone on to do great things.
As a matter of fact, one of the kids that she knew that was in her class got a full scholarship to New York, big time New York.
Juilliard?
To Juilliard, yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, kids are doing great things. And then they're going on even beyond that and having great careers. You know, I've had several private voice students that have been, you know, on American Idol and on The Four, and kids who are like, you know, with Atlantic Records. And I mean, they're talented already. And with good training and good direction and good encouragement, they're doing very, very, very well. So,
well, I was glad to tell my granddaughter, hey, I know her.
That's great. Well, it was great to see you out there that day in the car line picking up
right.
your granddaughter. Yeah, that was great. That was great. Well, Jess, do you have any questions, any comments?
Well, the only thing that occurs to me while you're all talking, and I think I want to pose this to you, I mean, I feel like we've maybe played on this a little bit, but, you know, obviously technology and the change in technology is something that impacts our work so much. And it occurs to me, you know, especially Richard, when I'm listening to your storied history too, and then fast forward to all this conversation about social media and what does the job entail now versus what it used to be before, or what facets of the job impact the way that you engage. And, you know, I think the question I might want to pose to both of you, both for better or for worse, so maybe it's like the pro and the con during this pandemic, because even like the iPhone, you know, I just worked with someone on a self-tape audition, and the pro is that we could tape this audition anywhere in their house with their phone on a stand. But then the downside is right now, you know, we're not in a room with each other, and no actor really wants to be acting to their phone. They want to be in a session, right? So I think the question I might want to pose to both of you, if you have something, is what's been, I mean, whether in general with technology or during this pandemic, what is the downside of the way that technology is taken over, and what has either been a cool experience that you've been part of or something that wouldn't have been possible had you not had this technology to bridge the gap between us all, whether in general in life or during this pandemic specifically? I'd be curious to hear if either of you have had experiences pro and con.
Well, I certainly have. As a matter of fact, something today. I have in the past done many Black History Month events for universities and various organizations and so forth. So I had an organization contact me for a Black History Month program and asked that I come in live and then do something from their school and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, you know, I don't think I want to do that. However, I have something that I can send you. So I'm doing a series of courses that are called Creative Arts Everywhere. And it's kind of a history of African Americans in classical music through the centuries. And there has been a lot of it. And Richard, I was going to mention that to you when you were talking about Symphony Center. But there have been a lot of classical composers of the African diaspora. They may be French, they may be Spanish or something like that. So I have a video that I put together to send to the school. They said they needed something for 40 minutes. So I put this video together, and I've been like going crazy because all kinds of things have been going wrong. It's a struggle, you know, to figure out how to use it all. And then I'm wanting to put some of my own performance video in there. So it's been a good thing because it allows me to still be connected with this community and other communities like this. But the downside is that it is just such a struggle and a learning curve. And, you know, but once it's done. And now you have a product, you know, so that's good. But for me, it's been just kind of crazy. All week I've been like, oh my gosh, you know, it didn't send or it didn't this. And this particular client has 2,000 people that want to watch this at the same time. So then I had to figure out, okay, my personal platform would be crashing with 2,000 people trying to log on. So what we did was upload it to YouTube in a private link so that they're able to access it privately, which gives me a gateway to that content. So, you know, it's just every day I'm learning something new. So that's my contribution to the answer to your question.
And it redefines the work that you have to do entirely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Richard, how about you? Thoughts?
Well, here's what's happening with me. Again, as I said to you before, I'm I'm technically a Luddite, but you know, the downside for me is, to give you a good example of something that's happened with me. I was doing a jazz show, as you mentioned in you know, reading my bio. I was doing a jazz show on WHBK, which is the University of Chicago radio station, and a lot of the jazz was done on the weekend, and most of the hosts are people who are of a certain age. I think maybe one or two people, maybe one of those people is actually a young person. And when I say young person, I mean they may be 30 years old. So the bottom line is that when COVID-19 hit and the radio station shut down in terms of people coming in to do their shows, for about several months, they replayed old shows that we did that were recorded. Well, after that began to run out, they contacted us. We had a meeting online, and they said, well, we like to continue with those jazz shows because people miss it, but you have to do it from home if you're going to do it. And there's an instruction online about, you know, how to record your show and, you know, and make it available. And so we talked it through on the session, and then there were some things that you had to do. First of all, I don't have a computer, and in order to do this, this is not really possible on an iPhone. I mean, it's just too much involved. I needed a laptop or a computer, a home computer, and so I've thought several times about trying to work into that, but I said I'm not going to buy a laptop just to do a show that I don't get paid for. I mean, it's a freebie, you know, doing the jazz show. I just love jazz, and so when they asked me to do it several years ago, I said, you know, fantastic. There's a guy who came on, who came on as a jazz host maybe about 3 months ago. Now this is an interesting story. I ran into this guy at the International Film Festival. He recognized me. He came over to me and said, I love jazz, and I'd love to be able to play it on the radio station that you guys do your jazz thing on. And we talked for a while. He sounded sincere. And so I gave him a number. He called it, and he actually got on, and he sounds pretty good. He sounded pretty good while we were still doing so he's younger than I am. I'm 79. He's like, I think he's in his late 50s, early 60s. But he's adept at the technology. So he's one of the few of us who's actually recording the show, putting it together, and it's running on the station. Right. And I regret that I don't have the show anymore. Part of it is me being lazy, but the other part is, why should I buy a laptop that I don't really need to do that show? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's kind of a dilemma. I mean, that's the reality about having to know what to do. A lot of people did their shows from home on these music stations. You know, they set it up like that and are able to, and I would imagine if I was still in the business, I'd probably have to do that too, you know?
Yeah.
But it's it's redefining what work looks like. That's exactly right. Like, you know, what you have to do in order to play in the same field as everyone right now. You know, what you have to do to keep playing ball, like get the computer and do all these things. Again, just like Greta, it's just that redefining what the product of work is now. You know, it's a crazy new set of skills and challenges that people have to bear in order to participate.
I've been involved in a couple of podcasts, not as a producer, but I've been invited to come on the podcast. And so one of them about a month ago, there was no problem. We set it up. They gave me the ID number, the password, and that was fine. No problem connecting. But Ben Jarofsky, who used to work for the Chicago Reader, did a lot of political stuff. Good friend of mine. He does great shows about politics and sometimes entertainment. So yesterday was the second time that we did this, and it's a podcast, but I have a hard time getting in. It was really frustrating. We went back and forth, and then because he's got a producer, he's at his home in Elmwood Park or something, the producer someplace else, and a computer guy who's really good. So at the end of the day, it took us like 15 minutes to connect. Yeah. Because finally I said, the things that you're doing, I'm not, he said, well, look on your screen and see. And then the thing he said to look at, I didn't have it on my screen.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that's because I've got an iPhone instead of a computer, but I told him all of that. So at the end of the day, I said, listen, this might be helpful. The things that I've done on Zoom, I've got a Zoom app, and I have an ID number and a password for all the things I do, and that's all I need. So he went and figured some way to get, because he said we don't use that, but I'm going to hook it up, and so he did, and then I was in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I have limitations, obviously, but I had a very smart guy on the other end who knew how to fix that.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, that's been one of our big talks here with folks that we've been working with through the center too, is, we keep calling it MacGyvering, that we're MacGyvering the setup. But it's kind of like, exactly what I mean, though. It's a little bit like figuring out like how we're going to turn this paper clip into a key. You know what I mean? Like we're figuring out what you have and how we're going to use it, because with the technology, there's so much more we can get done than we could before, but sometimes it's figuring out how do we do it with the tools that we have, right?
Well, I was assuming that all the people in the business that we're in, most of them know how to do this. I think right now we're all finding out what it is we don't know, right? Where you feel like an expert in some things, but like a novice in others, And so I think it needs to be a lot of crowdsourcing right now, and being honest about what, if we can do away with imposter syndrome is something we keep talking about too. If we could do away with imposter syndrome and not be afraid to verbalize what it is we don't know, we'll get to the other side, but we can only do it together. Because you're right, Richard, that there is someone in the hive that knows, right? So how do we call on their excellence while be honest about our unknowing? I hesitated to say insecurity or unfamiliarity or lack of, because it's not a lack. You can't discredit yourself for what you don't know because you've never been asked to know it before. But if you can assume that power, that why should I expect myself to know what I don't know, and someone does, then we can MacGyver. Yeah, but personally, the feeling I get from time to time is that, people will look at me and say, well, this guy's been in media for 48 years and he can't do that. That's awful. And so there's a certain amount of insecurity. We all agree that
media's kept redefining itself. Like the media that you're in is different than the media that and even when I started, the media that I started in is different than the media that we're in now, right? So I think there's this crazy, frontier of unknowing, that we all have areas of unknowing. That's because right. the media is growing faster than we can keep up with it too.
That's right.
Yeah. So I hear you totally though, Richard, because I have these moments here, and this is also with Henrique, who's with us, who's behind the scenes. There's sometimes that he knows things that I don't know. There's sometimes that we both have to figure out what we don't know together, I mean, I think it's a wild moment, and I'm both grateful for it because the three of us are sitting together right now. Yeah. But I'm actually sitting in my dining room. Do you know what I mean? Like these moments are strange and bizarre, but it's only because of the speed of technology, Yeah.
Well, also too, the person that's, who is engineering the whole thing, like the guy you just mentioned, the guy yesterday who was who was engineering the podcast, he was very understanding. He didn't make me feel like, I'm stupid and don't know what's going on. He was very helpful. And I really appreciate that. I mean, he didn't show signs of, that guy's an idiot, you know what I mean? And so that's very helpful. He's a young guy. I think he was probably in his mid-20s or something, So, I get it, but I'm just appreciative that he was a guy who was understanding and patient. That made a big difference for me. So I didn't sit here sweating and trying to figure out, okay, am I doing something wrong? How come I can't find that button he's talking about? How come I don't see that on my phone? That kind of thing. Yeah, Greta, you were about to say, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's important for us to not during this time to not feel that we don't understand, at least for myself. You know, I think I've gotten over that feeling. And in part because of Jess. Way back in March, I did something for the call for center. And I said, oh, Jess, I don't know how to do any of this. And I was just like freaked out. And she goes, nobody knows how to do this now. So jump in here 2 years from now. You will look like you don't know what you're doing because everyone will have figured it out. So just jump in with both feet and let the chips fall where they may. And that's exactly what I have done. And I feel, you know, I don't feel afraid to say, I don't know how to do this. It's just like, help me know how to do it so I can move on and get the task done that I need to do in an effective way. So, you know, my whole attitude about it has changed because I was very, you know, just feeling inadequate initially, you know, but I think everyone was, you know, this is a new world. It's a new world.
Yeah. And I think that there's a reticence because there's that assumptive like element of other people knowing something. Right. It reminds me of those improv games where two people know what we're talking about and then somebody has to enter the scene and act like they know until they know, like, and that idea of like not naming the subject, but everyone's talking around it and you're in the scene and you don't contribute until you know how to talk, but you like act like you know what the conversation's about and try to infer. And that is what a lot of this feels like, is like, it's that fake it till you make it. But also the people that are in the scene are just kind of learning by doing too, you know?
Yeah.
No, it's funny. It's funny that you even hearken to that conversation, because just this week I was watching one of our streams and looking back at like things that we produced in like April, like, so like really early pandemic stuff. And I had this moment where I had to laugh at something I was doing because I looked at myself. I was like, oh, I could screen grab me right there because that's deer in the headlights. I see the fear in her eyes. I'm like on the frame, like, like, because I'm like, what is going on? Like the wheels are off right now, you know? But I could see it. I was like, nobody else knows that look in my eye, but I know that girl is freaking out right now because she has no idea what's happening, you know?
Yeah.
No idea. But, so I mean, it's a beautiful thing, falling and flying at the same time, you know?
Even with today's presentation, because I had so much difficulty yesterday with the podcast thing, I'm saying to myself, oh God, I hope this goes okay. And that I can connect and not look like an idiot, you know what I mean? Because I always think the assumption is that the person on the other end assumes that I know, you know, about this. And yeah, I've done more than a couple of things, but each time it's different. Sometimes it works very well and sometimes it doesn't work at all. After I have to keep trying over and over again. And the tech who's involved, like this guy yesterday, and your guy there, I mean, other than that, I would have been in a lot of trouble, you know what I mean? So, and I felt bad because we'd scheduled to do it at a certain times. And, you know, we've done it before. The last time we never got video at all. And then when we did it this time, there was a time limit, you know, on Zoom. And right before we ended our conversation, the time ran out. So then, you know, all of a sudden, boop, he was gone. I went, oh, because I do know how that works in terms of the time limit, and it will cut off. So then we had to connect by phone to finish our conversation.
Yeah. These are interesting times. Yep.
Well, I think that's my log line is falling and flying. Flying is just coordinated falling, right? So, you know, that's what I think. That's what I think.
Thank you so much for being with us today. This has been such a pleasure to be with you and hear about your wonderful career and the things that you're doing. And I just want to encourage you to not be afraid of this technology. Just get out there and make it your own, because you can.
Well, when I start, it's not that bad. I mean, I can do this now, you know.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, you look great. You sound great. Perfect.
Make sure, tell your husband I said hello.
I sure will. And he says hello to you. You take care and be safe, and looking forward to your next shot. Maybe after you get your next shot, we can all get together. That would be fun.
Makes sense to me.
And I have to wait patiently and catch up with you guys. So if you guys start having social engagements as like post-vaccinated individuals, don't make me jealous of you guys. I'll just sit here on the sidelines waiting for my turn.
That's because you're young.
Oh God, I don't feel it these days, but God bless you for saying so, Richard Steele. It is so good to see you, Richard. It's so good to be with you again, Greta. Thank you guys for spending this hour together. And to those watching at home, thank you for joining us. We look forward to sitting down with you for another sound check soon. I'm just reminding myself as I'm saying this, I'm in the hot seat with Greta next week.
Yeah.
So I have to get myself ready for the interrogation. I hope I know what I'm talking about next week.
That should be great. Should be great.
That'd be great. You got to tune in, Richard, so you can see Jess.
I'll be in the hot seat. I'll be in the hot seat next week. See, and my earbuds are falling out. Technology fails us all. I'll be in the hot seat next week for those of you that want to join us, or for those questions that you've been holding back that you've always wanted to ask me. That'll be your time to get in the chat next week. So we'll be back next week, Friday, 11 a.m. Central. Until then, wherever this finds you, whether in Chicago, stay warm, or somewhere else, don't rub it in our face. Stay safe and sane, and we hope to see you at a future sound check. And have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.